So I'd like to go ahead and kick off the meeting. Thanks all of you for coming. My name is Nikki Fowler. I am the supervisor of the Environmental Health Review Services program here at the Environmental Health Bureau. Our program coordinates closely with the Planning and Building Inspection departments to review and approve planning and building permits. And we're also charged with issuing on-site wastewater treatment system permits and inspecting those systems. And so you're here today because we are in the process of looking to amend our local on-site wastewater regulations to comply and bring them in line with the state on-site wastewater treatment system policy that was adopted in 2012. So I'm going to go ahead today and do a short overview of where the regulatory structure between the Water Board and Monterey County Environmental Health, take you through the history that brought us to this point, and just kind of give you an update of what's to come. From there, we'll go through the comments that we've received in writing to this point as well, and then after that we can go ahead and start taking some discussion and comments of the actual technical document or items within the document. And so we've met previously as a smaller group. The meetings were always open to the public, but we hadn't had a large degree of interest. I think the article in the Monterey County Herald a week and a half or so back helped to get the word out, which is great. But we had been meeting as a smaller group previously to discuss the technical merits and implementation strategies of the requirements in this document. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. The State Water Resources Control Board grants authority to, I believe it's about 7 regional water quality control boards. The Central Coast region oversees Monterey County, and they are the entity that gives us the authority to issue septic system permits throughout Monterey County. And so ultimately our regulations have historically and in the future are based on the requirements that the Central Coast Basin Plan lays out. Go ahead and go on to the next slide. So in 2012, the State Water Resources Control Board adopted the state's OWTS policy, or OUTS policy. It's a statewide, risk-based, tiered approach for the regulation and management of on-site wastewater treatment system installations and replacements. And from this point forward, I will likely be saying OUTS instead of on-site wastewater treatment systems to save myself a few seconds. So this OUTS policy applies across the whole state of California and sets the level of performance and protection expected from new OUTS and repairs or expansions to existing OUTS. So it's broken into 5 tiers. Tier 0 are the existing septic systems that are already in place and they're functioning properly without incident. There's no changes required by this LAMP if your septic system is functioning in accordance with the Tier 0 criteria, which is basically you're not surfacing, the wastewater from your septic system is not surfacing, it's not backing up into your home, and it's not contaminating groundwater or surface water. Tier 1 includes a set of prescriptive standards that don't take into consideration local geology, historical local practices, and they are just an across-the-board hard set of rules that we don't have any discretion in how we implement those. Tier 2 is why we're here today, the Local Agency Management Program. So what we are proposing to do within the Tier 2 parameters is to come up with a comparable version of the Tier 1 standards, ones that take into consideration the way that we've done things here in Monterey County for many years, take into consideration the configuration of our lots of record, as well as the soils that we commonly encounter here. Tier 3 of the state's OUTS policy excuse me, includes standards for areas with impaired water bodies. And these are water bodies that are known to be impaired based on on-site wastewater treatment system impacts. So that we, at this time, have no impaired water bodies that are pointing to septic systems as the culprit for the basis of those impairments. And then Tier 4, lastly, defines what a OUTS failure is and the owner's responsibilities to get it to become a functioning system again and get it back into that Tier 0 state with a repair or a replacement permit. So why do we need a LAMP? because this is our opportunity to propose modified yet comparable standards to Tier 1. We need to keep in mind that the goals of the state's on-site wastewater treatment system policy are protection of groundwater, surface water, and public health. And so by no means is the water board going to allow us to implement or approve a LAMP that doesn't do those things. And so while we are able to come up with creative or out-of-the-box ways of trying to meet the same goal, that's our end game here, is protection of public health, groundwater, and surface water quality. So we've tried to consider our local geology, those historical practices, and lastly, and really quite importantly, Tier 2 allows for supplemental treatment systems. These are systems that include pre-treatment of the effluent prior to dispersal into the soil, when site constraints won't allow a conventional septic tank and drain field to be installed. Tier 1 does not allow for supplemental treatment systems. So if Monterey County does nothing and a new lot can't be developed based on site constraints that are out there, that lot can't be developed because the supplemental treatment can't be utilized to overcome those constraints. In addition, there's plenty of existing lots of records that are constrained. They may have had a functioning septic system for many years, but they are located close to a waterway. There might be seasonal high groundwater that we're not aware of currently, but that when we do the site evaluations that are required with Tier 1 and the LAMP, we would identify that a conventional gravity septic tank and drain field wouldn't be appropriate to be installed there because of the potential risk for impacts to those three magic things: public health, groundwater, and surface water quality. So let me take you back a little ways. In September of 2000, Assembly Bill 885 was adopted, which required statewide regulations for septic systems. This posed quite a to-do locally, or at the State Water Board. There was a lot of opposition, controversy. Most people felt like a statewide approach wasn't practical. California is enormous, and there is a wide range of terrain and soils and density of lots. And so ultimately, after a lot of litigation and compromise, the State Water Resources Control Board adopted the OUTS policy that we have before us today. And so our local Regional Water Quality Control Board, the Central Coast Region, adopted the state's on-site wastewater policy into their basin plan in June of 2000, or May of 2013. And basically that is what our ordinance needs to be based upon. And so we have, we had until May of 2016 to put forward a draft of a local agency management program, which we did. We received comment back from the public as well as from the Regional Water Quality Control Board staff. And with that, we set out to further refine that draft to make it more workable, to identify those things that didn't really make sense or were contrary to maybe other parts of the LAMP, but really spent a lot of time cleaning that up. Go ahead. We held a series of meetings from July of 2016 to June of last year. And that's pretty much bringing us to where we are today. In recent months, I've had frequent correspondence with the Regional Water Board staff, trying to make sure that we fully understand what their water board is going to accept when we submit our draft proposal, our final proposal come May of this year, so that we work out any kinks and don't have it kicked back to us for further modifications. I wanted to take a minute here to step back and describe two types of septic systems that are out there, and I've already mentioned them. We have the conventional on-site wastewater treatment system, which is your septic tank that gravity flows to normally a rock-filled trench. The septic tank, its purpose is to have the solid waste settle out of the wastewater and the liquid waste move on past a baffle out to the drain field. We call that primary treated septic effluent. Alternately, there is the alternative or supplemental treatment system. These systems are not passive or gravity. They are actually quite active and require ongoing maintenance, often electricity, telemetry, to make sure that they're functioning. And because of that, they're only put into place when a conventional septic tank and drain field won't work. So the purpose is that the wastewater goes through an aeration system or through a filter bed, in addition to just that standard settling out of the solids and passing of the liquid to the treatment center of the system, so it can have secondary effluent quality. And that way the treatment occurs within the tank or the filter unit itself and relies less on the soil that a conventional gravity system utilizes to clean up the wastewater. So going into essentially tier 0 or functioning existing on-site wastewater systems, the LAMP is not going to compel any changes so long as the system continues to function properly. This means that you can do minor repairs. If there's corrosion inside the tank, your contractor can still go out and make those minor repairs without any need for a permit. And so our message there is do your job to maintain your system. Have it pumped regularly. Have it inspected to make sure that it doesn't get into a failed state. At an arm's length, you may potentially be impacted in that liquid waste haulers are going to be required to submit monthly reports to the Environmental Health Bureau on all the pump outs they do throughout Monterey County. So any septic tank that's pumped will generate a report that does a basic inspection of the condition of the septic tank, whether or not there was any drain back when they pumped that tank from the drain field, and the capacity of wastewater that was pumped. We don't intend to take action on those pumper reports unless it's accompanied by a complaint that says my neighbor's sewage is surfacing and now we have some evidence that, oh, they've been having to pump it too. Ultimately, we intend to just store them in a document management system for reference at the time of a future septic system repair application or a building permit repair or remodel or expansion. The LAMP defines an on-site wastewater treatment system failure as one that is surfacing to the ground or is backing up inside the home or the structure that it serves. In those circumstances, it needs to be repaired or replaced in accordance with the LAMP. We also have the caveat that on-site wastewater treatment systems that are known to contaminate groundwater, surface water, or public health, even though they might still be able to dispose of wastewater, it's not necessarily coming up to the ground surface. If we have evidence that it is impacting surface water, groundwater, public health, then you may be compelled to upgrade the system to meet minimum standards of the LAMP. We also have a provision in the LAMP that cesspools or hollow seepage pits would need to be repaired or retrofitted or demolished and taken out of service immediately upon discovery. And that has to do with the fact that these are open voids in the ground that aren't necessarily or aren't structurally sound over time. They could collapse and result in a public safety hazard. Timing of the LAMP, it will apply to any on-site wastewater treatment system permit that is issued after the date of the LAMP's adoption. And so if you have a septic permit that has been issued prior to, we're going to just say for the sake of conversation here, May 10th, that's our goal to get to the water board. If we have a septic system that has been issued prior to May 10th of 2018, that septic permit would remain valid and not be subject to the requirements of the LAMP. However, in the event the septic system did not get installed and it came to its date of expiration, we wouldn't be allowed to renew that. It would then need to be reapplied for under the requirements of the LAMP. Any questions on that? Okay. So moving forward, we are, after today's meeting, the comments that we received today, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time further refining the LAMP, working through it, so that we can get our final draft off to the Regional Water Board staff and we're aiming for February 23rd in order to keep with our timelines to get to the Board of Supervisors in April and our Water Board in May. Ultimately, the Water Board staff person that we're working with will review the LAMP, and we're hopeful, based on the correspondence we've had back and forth and open dialogue, that she'll be able to write a letter of support to the Central Coast Water Board stating that she's reviewed it, and she believes that it is equally as protective of the environment, public health, and groundwater, surface water as the Tier 1 standards in the OUTS policy. So we're aiming to get to our Board of Supervisors here on April 3rd. That will be a timed item, and so you would be able to attend that meeting as well. Hopefully we'll receive authorization to submit to the Central Coast Water Board on behalf of Monterey County on that date, and then we'll head to the Central Coast Water Board in May to request approval of our LAMP. In the event we are not successful in getting our LAMP to the Central Coast Water Board in May, or that they don't approve it, on May 13th of 2018, the Tier 1 standards become effective. That's 5 years from the date that the Central Coast Water Board adopted the state's on-site wastewater policy. So those timelines are all laid out in the on-site wastewater policy that the state put forth, and now we're here up against that deadline. So that's my presentation, trying to give the overall summary of why we're here. And as I noted here, we're really interested in receiving written comments from you if you have them. We are interested in receiving your verbal comments today as well, but in order to make sure that we receive them in their full intent, we're asking that written comments be submitted as well. So that concludes my presentation. I think that I would like to take any comments on kind of the process up to this point, or if there's any questions so far, or if you'd rather get right into the comments. Ralph?
Just going back a little bit on, we talked about the May 10th deadline for the permit applications and permits issued prior to that. Back up a little bit more, what about subdivisions that have had approval prior to and haven't been built yet? Where are we going to go with those?
The subdivisions are going to be, they haven't had permits issued yet for their septic systems, so they are going to be subject to the LAMP. So there is a provision in the LAMP that talks about minimum lot sizes for new subdivisions, but we don't anticipate that those will apply to subdivisions that have been, certainly ones that have had their final map recorded, that wouldn't apply to them. But we're anticipating those subdivisions that have been deemed complete and are already moving toward the tentative map phase, that those wouldn't be impacted either. We do need to modify the language that's in the current draft of the LAMP, but I had that conversation recently with Water Board staff. Provided there are no real density limitations or other potential impacts to groundwater, surface water, or public health. Yes?
I'm not sure how this might affect. I've got an older mobile home that I bought in 2015. We were one of the last pit systems that were put in. It's what I was told at the time, as long as I replaced it with the same sized home, no garbage disposal, that my existing system, as long as it functions correctly at the time of potentially putting a new manufactured home on this property, that it would be grandfathered in as long as there's no problem with the system and it passes everything. How would this affect that, or would it?
The way that the LAMP is currently written is that you would need to do a performance evaluation at the time of the building permit, but provided you were not intending to increase the number of bedrooms or the wastewater generation at the site, provided the existing system was working satisfactorily, it would be allowed to remain in use.
So the only other catch is that I do initially, the septic tank that was in there was 1,200 gallons, and I understand that minimum is 1,500 gallons, but that it was, you know, we put in a whole system, the pit system, and that everything was functioning correctly. Would I get into a snag because it's a 1,200 gallon tank instead of a 1,500 gallon tank minimum?
So I guess I want to take a step back and say that we also, I'm talking off of our draft regulations. So in the event anything were to change, that's possible that
I won't hold you to it.
Yeah, so, however, basically, if you're not intensifying the wastewater generation,
Right.
the system that is in the ground would be allowed to remain in use.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, in a real estate transaction now, who determines, I mean, can a transaction go through, or does the integrity of the septic system have to be determined by some governmental agency, or what? What's the process?
At
I wanna
this,
sell my house, and I have a septic system, so who determines the integrity of my system?
Monterey County has no intention of inserting itself into real estate transactions at this time. So it's my understanding that it is commonplace for a buyer to request an on-site wastewater treatment system evaluation prior to a real estate transaction. And so they would get that information from a qualified on-site wastewater professional.
Well, normally you would
to
purge
evaluate
the leach line. You do a purge test on the leach line, correct?
I would have to refer to the qualified professionals and the real estate professionals.
Okay, so, but the transaction can go through, and you people don't need to be notified that a transaction is being conducted that has a septic tank on it?
The current draft of our LAMP has no requirements for real estate transactions.
Okay.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to just briefly go through the comments that we've received in writing to date, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty of those technical specifications that you have for us today. So comment one was from Robert Crandall. He is a representative of the Presby Alternative On-Site Wastewater Treatment System. He provided some comments that discussed how the monitoring requirements specified by the LAMP would not apply to his system, and asked that we think that through. And so I don't think that we need to get into I don't intend to respond to those comments today, but ultimately he was reaching out to us on behalf of his proprietary system, his alternative treatment system that would be a possibility for approval in Monterey County. We currently don't have any Presby systems in Monterey County, but that's just because for the past year and a half, 2 years, we've had a freeze on allowing new technologies to come into Monterey County. That has to do with the fact that we have had limited staff resources, and a new alternative treatment system has somewhat of a learning curve. There is new technology, new inspection requirements, new monitoring requirements, and we haven't had the ability to take that on. So once we get this LAMP into place, we are going to start opening the door to try and encourage as many technologies as are available to be able to be used in Monterey County. Of course, we are making sure that they're proven technologies so that our community isn't the testing ground for those technologies.
I have another question.
Sure.
I'm a little slow, so you gotta bear with me. I'm 83 years old, so. But you made a comment that if the septic tank gets pumped out, that the septic tank company must submit a report.
Yes.
But you also stated that you would take no action on it. So if you're not gonna take any action on it, then why the report?
The report would be taken into our electronic records management system for reference at a future building permit application. So if somebody in the future wanted to add on a bedroom or even just expand the footprint of their house, we would have the records to say, all right, well, how's your septic system? It's, it was installed 30 years ago. We'll now have information that has to do with the functional integrity of the system to say, well, there was the tank is showing signs of corrosion, or the lid is, one of the tank lids is not there. Those things will need to be replaced before we can issue the building permit.
Yeah, for some reason at age 83, I kind of don't believe a lot of this nonsense. I think it's highly regulatory, because I do think you want to control, how do I word it? The freedom of the individual to come and go. I mean, I've been advocating to my kids that let's get the hell out of California, because this is getting kind of ridiculous. It's overbearing by a number of agencies, state and county and city, and I just don't trust you people right now. There's just too much. Your actions speak louder than your words. Let's just leave it go at that for now.
Okay. I'll take your comment,
Right,
thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and, move on, oh, yes?
Just a quick question. The idea then for us is to get our septic tanks pumped out before this thing takes place, is that right?
Oh, sure, sure. If you wanna buy yourself, with the industry standard is to have your septic tank pumped out every 3 to 5 years.
Right.
And so if you wanna stay off the grid completely for the next 3 years, by all means, get your septic tank pumped out now. Find out if there's any deficiencies that you can have corrected as soon as possible. That's gonna protect the things that we're concerned with, so
So
I'm on board with that.
once this thing goes into effect, what is the additional cost that's gonna be associated with the system by the changing of the requirements?
That's a long response, and so I will come back to that. I wanna see if you had a question that was related.
On your response to the pumping of the tanks, since it's gonna be submitted to the pumper is gonna make the file report, what do you consider, or your agency, a red flag that this person's getting their tank pumped too frequently?
Currently, the county code said if somebody has their septic tank pumped out more than 2 times a year, that would be considered a failure. That's what's written in county code. Pete?
You gotta be careful there, because there's restaurants that are on septic that pump their tanks more than twice a year in order to keep their system functioning, and they've had no issues in the past. So again, you get a restaurant that does a good job of maintaining their system, and let's say they pump it quarterly, cause it's a septic / grease trap. You know, and they wanna come in and do a minor repair, is that gonna be held against them because they've been doing the maintenance on their system?
I don't think,
That's a slippery slope.
no, I think you're right. That's a good point and something that we can clarify. That perhaps an approved maintenance schedule.
There's separate residential for commercial.
Well, I think an approved maintenance schedule would be the way to go, so that we have a shared or mutual understanding of what a normal frequency of pumping would be. Because I think it can vary from operation to operation. And so that way we would know, you know, Cafe X pumps their septic tank every 4 months. And if we start seeing it come in every two months, perhaps, then that would be a red flag. The way that we intend to process these, though, is that they would be taken in by office support staff and scanned into the database, and not necessarily inspected on a case-by-case basis by the environmental health specialists. So really, we do intend to use them as a reference tool and not a tool to respond and take action. So, did that answer your question fully, sir?
I think so.
Okay. You asked costs, and that is a difficult question for me to answer, because as a regulator, I'm making requests of information that need to be taken in, but I'm often not a party to the financial